Night of the Hunter is a 1955 feature film directed by Charles Laughton, based on a 1953 novel of the same name authored by Davis Grupp. In his only role as director, Charles Laughton and cinematographer Stanley Cortez employed many cinematic techniques to enhance the film's storytelling, alongside Walter Schumann's soundtrack. This group presentation video will focus on a 9-minute extract from the film, beginning as characters John and Pearl escape from their house and ending as they enter a barn down river. This video will cover the scenes within this extract and provide commentary on the use of film style, cinematography, mise-en-scène, and sound. So, let's begin with an analysis on Night of the Hunter's film style. Night of the Hunter is a classic example of the German expressionist film style, with clear influences from film noir also present within the film. German expressionism is an art movement associated with Weimar-era post-World War I Germany. The banning of trade of foreign films in the nation forced German theatres to look to local film studios to keep bringing in audiences. This spurred rapid domestic film production heavily influenced by the culture of the Weimar Republic, which was reactionary to, and often critical of, traditionalism. This countercultural renaissance heavily influenced the film style of German expressionist films, which sought to defy then conventional cinematic styles. The artistic flair of directors such as Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau, Fritz Lang, and Robert Weiner not only influenced Night of the Hunter, but left a legacy in the form of the German expressionist film style that is still built upon today by modern filmmakers.
But what actually is German expressionism? Put simply, the film style of German expressionism is characterized by the use of various cinematic techniques, namely low-key lighting to produce a chiaroscuro effect, which results in heavy contrast with bright whites and deep blacks, often in order to emphasize characters and items of interest within the frame, as well as casting very sharp shadows. Mise-en-scène is also highly prioritized, as set design and props within the frame are often delicately placed to create a sense of surrealism and distortion, eschewing realism. While the film does not thematically line up with the film noir genre, opting to portray morality in a binary good versus evil fight, as opposed to film noir's penchant for moral ambiguity, the film does still borrow imagery associated with the film noir style, namely the use of silhouettes, which itself is considered to be derived from German expressionism's liberal use of shadows. The decision to film in black and white is also a clear example of film noir influence, though this was one point of criticism levied at the film by critics and audiences alike at the time of release. The film has gone on to be widely recognized as one of the greatest American films of all time, despite its original lackluster reception.
Night of the Hunter is also often described as a mix of a horror story and a fairy tale, with esteemed French New Wave director Francois Truffaut describing the film as, quote, a horrifying news item retold by small children. There are clear examples of the expressionistic film style being explored in a unique fashion to elegantly portray this duality of the story within our chosen extract, and much of this storytelling comes from its unique cinematography. Whereas conventional filmmaking often employs 3-point lighting when shooting on set to illuminate the scene, Night of the Hunter opts for low-key lighting for the shooting of many shots within the film. This lighting creates a strong contrast between the lit and dim areas of the frame, and the resulting image delicately pays homage to the underexposure common in film noir movies of the time. For example, several shots within our extract use a fill light from the right of the frame, which casts a strong shadow leftward, which contributes to the film's strong expressionistic imagery. As the children escape the house, for example, shadows cast by the clock and chair are stretched so far that it appears eerie and unnatural. Strong shadows are also emphasised here, as Uncle Bertie's steptoe lay asleep on the floor drunk, with shadows composing about half of the frame. Towards the very end of the extract, backlighting is used to create a strong and sharp outline of a bird in a cage. An appropriate visual metaphor is that children can also be seen as creatures of innocence, prevented from truly being free by the oppressive force of the hunter's ever-persistent chase, like the bird in its cage. Arguably the most effective example of low-key lighting is seen here, as Powell is silhouetted against the night sky, shot from a medium-low camera angle. The cinematography here makes Powell's appearance terrifying, and Powell's all-black, featureless figure is perhaps the best evidence of film noir influence within Night of the Hunter. Commenting on the film's use of shadows, Jared Zimmerline writes, Laughton's poised direction and the deep-shadowed frames of cinematographer Stanley Cortez create a narrative realm that ventures from any general sense of realism without straying too far toward the fantastic.
Stanley Cortez and editor Robert Golden's approach to shot duration also sets Night of the Hunter apart from many films, as shots last longer on average than a typical feature film shot duration. Most shots rest for around 5 to 8 seconds, with the shortest shots being reserved for moments of tense action, such as this 2-second shot as antagonist Reverend Harry Powell flails in the river. This slower and more methodical approach to shot sequencing allows the scene to breathe and for the viewer to appreciate the rich imagery provided in each shot. Establishing shots benefit greatly from this attention to detail, with the longest shot within the extract being 40 seconds in duration, as the children pull up to the barn in the skiff. This shot allows the non-diegetic soundtrack lullaby, named Hush Little One Hush, to play out in a moment of calm as the children have found a place of temporary refuge. The camera stays still, observing the quiet scene from a long distance.
While most shots are static, mobile framing is used 4 times within the extract. 2 panning shots are used as the children are running along the riverbank to the skiff, and later as they're floating in said skiff alongside a barn. There are also 2 uses of high camera angle helicopter shots, an extreme long shot as the children's skiff pulls up downriver, and another as Powell is revealed to be travelling on horseback he got hold of by knifing his previous owner. These dynamic shots give the film a sense of visual variety, and the shot of Powell in particular exudes a strong sense of foreboding as the lens zooms into the subject and the music builds to a non-diegetic heavy brass soundtrack. While shot distance within this extract never goes beyond the medium close-up range when focusing on human characters, except for this one shot of Powell, close-up shots can be seen of animals just over 6 minutes into the extract. As the scene transitions from Powell speaking on the ills of children to John and Pearl floating downriver, a close-up of an owl, a predator species, crossfades to a close-up of a turtle, an animal associated with innocence, making yet another metaphor of the predator-prey relationship between Powell and the children. Rabbits are shown next, and this scene is reincorporated later into the film as an owl preys upon a rabbit, following which figurative guardian angel character Rachel Cooper muses, "It's a hard world for the little things." The owl is also filmed at a medium-low camera angle, looking up at the owl, which is commonly associated with making the figure look dominant and imposing, which is appropriate given the metaphor.
Lastly, there are a few other key instances of camera angle to discuss before moving on to mise-en-scène. This famous shot of the children escaping Powell as he screams and brandishes his knife is iconic for good reason, with the high camera angle being one of them. The previous shots during the chase were faster and filmed at medium camera angles, this shot being slightly longer at 5 seconds. Along with the tailing off with the soundtrack allows the audience to detach themselves and calm down from the tension. The high camera angle also allows us to understand the spatial difference between Powell and the children, and realize that they are safe. High camera angles are used again during the Pretty Fly lullaby scene, reminding the audience that although yes, the children are safe, they are still small and vulnerable. And now, let's move on to mise-en-scène.
As mentioned earlier with the example of the owl and the turtle and rabbits, imagery is a highly emphasised part of Night of the Hunter's overall mise-en-scène. This can also be seen as the children float downriver in the skiff underneath the weave of a spiderweb. Positioned in the top left of the frame, the direction from which Powell was previously chasing them, the spiderweb acts as a reminder of the peril the children face should they be tracked down by the hunter. The spiderweb also contributes to the film's expressionistic film style, with Stephen F. Bauer writing, "The presentation of nature itself is so unreal that what might otherwise have been a lyrical scene becomes an expressionistic distortion. This is further built upon with the following close-up shots of the animals on the riverbank." The close-up shots of animals also include this shot of a frog, this shot of a turtle, and this shot of 2 rabbits. The stark thematic contrast from the scene where the children escaped Powell to this serene scene as they float their way downriver is complemented by the emphasis of the animals in the foreground of the shot. Being on the run from a force as evil as Powell creates a relatability between the children and animals, and Moylan C. Mills writes, "In a series of incredibly beautiful shots, the children drift into another world. They are engulfed and somehow comforted by the natural elements. They are surrounded by other innocents who must also fight for their existence in the Darwinian universe."
The position of characters, props, and other visual elements within the frame, otherwise known as framing, is also key to the film's mise-en-scène. For example, this powerful scene as the children gaze upon the previously mentioned trapped bird. They are positioned to the right of the bird and lower in the frame. These 2 shots show that the children are looking up at the bird, contemplatively. The shot implies that the children long to be free and can now appreciate and truly empathize for this trapped creature, building off from the theme of the riverboat scene as they were truly then, and also thematically tied to the animals.
Musing on the many compliments he has received for his work on the film, and questions about filming location, Stanley Cortez has expressed that it was a joy working on Night of the Hunter, and that the river scene was filmed at Par 15 of Republic Studios, a studio set. Filmed on set as opposed to on location, there are many interesting choices made regarding the design of the set. Though filmed primarily at a medium camera angle, camera height was quite elevated for many shots within the scene, which allows the audience to appreciate the starry night sky that sets the scene for this dreamy, fairy tale-like scene within the film that the set designers put in place. In addition to the aforementioned night sky and the previously mentioned animals within this scene, we are also treated to this long duration shot near the end of the extract, as the children pull up to the barn downriver. The barn is quite tall, and the sharp angles of the roof combined with its very dark tone contributes to the shot's chiaroscuro, and the almost distorted appearance of the barn complements the film's dedication to the German expressionist film style. Lastly, the acting within this extract is what sells the audience on the Southern Gothic vibe of the film. In particular, the excellent work of Robert Mitchum as Reverend Harry Powell. Mitchum's desperate chase, enraged expression, and blood-curdling screams sell the audience on the story's antagonist in a truly horrifying and brilliantly portrayed manner. Mitchum's performance evoked memories of classic expressionist film acting, according to Sigurd Enge, who wrote that Mitchum's stylized movements resemble the movements of the sleepwalker in Caligari. John's determination can also be seen in this shot. Despite the drunken Uncle Bertie failing to be of assistance, his care for his sister, in the face of likely death, prevails, and he rushes to not only get to safety, but to protect Pearl as well. Pearl's seeming indifference to the affair also reinforces the fairy tale aspect of the film, as in the face of possible death she is seen sleeping, and only just after escaping Powell, as John rests, she sings a lullaby as she floats under the starry night sky.
Lastly, no discussion of Night of the Hunter would be complete without mentioning the film's sound, in particular Walter Schumann's excellent soundtrack. Almost all of the scenes within the extract are scored, either by orchestral soundtrack or by supplementary lullabies, such as Pretty Fly and Hush Little One Hush. Beginning with the children's escape from the house all the way until they finally roll away from Powell, non-diegetic strings and brass are used to musically evoke tension, and diegetic sound effects, notably the sound of banging on the door by the trapped Powell, inform the audience of Powell's furious rage. Strings are used for more subtle musical cues, such as when the music reaches its quietest point during the Uncle Bertie scene, the brass crescendos dominating the film's soundscape as the confrontation on the river takes place.
Powell then takes a full 5 seconds to build up to and deliver this howling scream, the horrific nature of his character reflected by his banshee-like bawl. The music then immediately transitions to quiet, serene strings and bells as the lullabies take over the soundscape. Recorded in ADR by actress Betty Benson, the Pretty Fly is the first of these lullabies, a musical allegory to both the children themselves and their mother Willa Harper, as Pearl sings that the Pretty Fly's wife, in this case Willa, had 2 pretty children who flew away, an obvious reference to the children's desperate escape from Powell. A very subtle musical transition takes place in the next scene as Walt and Icy converse over Willa's supposed disappearance, which builds up to a brass crescendo as Powell is revealed in the helicopter shot and close up on horseback. He's still chasing the children, and he's still a credible threat. Soft music then follows as the children approach the riverbank orphanage. The music becomes more sinister, but still quiet, as Powell complains about the ills of children of the peach pickers. Then falls back to quiet, somber music as the audience are treated to the final musical piece within the extract, the second lullaby, Hush, Little One, Hush.
This final musical piece foreshadows the protection that will be offered unto them by their adoptive mother figure, protective and figurative guardian angel, Rachel Cooper. Lines like, "Lay your head on my chest, angels old will keep you safe, and morning soon will light your pillow, birds will sing beyond the willow," are evident of this theme. It has since been learned that the excellence of the musical score was not only due to Walter Schumann's musical brilliance, but also Charles Laughton's unique soundtrack direction, with Brian Eggert writing, Laughton demanded that his score not re-emphasize what the actor should already be conveying, but rather build on the power of the narrative by fixing an additional layer.
In conclusion, Night of the Hunter tells a powerful story with its expressionistic and film noir-influenced film style, engaging cinematography, beautiful mise-en-scène, and moving use of sound. Though Charles Laughton's film was panned at original release, it has rightfully earned every contemporary accolade to its name, and truly deserves to be remembered as one of the all-time greatest films of thriller cinema.